When I was young and was starting to get tattooed or dyeing my hair or getting piercings, people would say, you can't get a job like that. So I'd say, watch me do it. My name is Maggie Freleng. I am a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and producer. I break the role by being unapologetically myself. I grew up in Port Jefferson, New York. It's a suburb of the city on Long Island. A lot of Long Island is very white, particularly where I grew up was a very rich area. And my family wasn't necessarily that. I'm Jewish. I grew up in a lower middle class family, so I never particularly felt like I fit in. Going to school, there was maybe like a handful of kids of color that I went to school with, and I saw the way they were treated as others and as different. I didn't like to see them ostracized or picked on, but at the time I didn't know what these things I was feeling were. My grandfather grew up in the Deep South, and he, told me these stories about him being a kid and similarly not understanding why the Black kids, this was during segregation, were separated from him. My grandparents were always very conscious of social equity, racial equity, and just being just all around. It wasn't this like conversation about it, but it was just watching the way they were and they behaved and the way they just talked about people as people and not others, or they look this way. Everyone was just a person, and my grandfather really inspired me with that. I learned very young that I have a privilege and people will listen to me. It's always been the most important thing for me to help people. And so if I can use myself as a vessel to get stories out there, people's voices who are in detention centers, in prison, locked away and forgotten about by the world, people who are marginalized. I don't speak for these people. I let them tell their own stories. You hear their voices. I just gather them, narrate through them. And I think that's really important. We are all so much more than the worst thing we've done or has happened to us. Fundamentally, that's how we look at people in prison. You are your conviction, and you're there, and you're behind bars. And that's how the system was set up to look at these people. That's how we look at these people because the way we're told to look at them. And I want to change that. I really like to start off and get the backstory of everybody. Who are you? Who are your parents? Where did you grow up? What happened in your life that led you to be where you are? That is what helps people, someone from a totally different walk of life relate to a Black man who's been in prison for 44 years. When you hear like, oh, that happened to him as a kid, and ooh, that could have been me if I just had done that one little thing differently, that resonates with people. People listen to the stories that I tell and they love connecting that way. And I think it's so much more powerful than just listening to someone tell their story presently.
We're so lucky to live at a time where we get to live in a world where Maggie Freleng exists and does the work that she does.
Jillian's podcast, True Crime Obsessed with Patrick Hines, they review everything true crime, podcasts, TV shows, documentaries. So they covered the documentary I did, and it was really great. It was funny. They pointed out all of the really silly things that were in it.
We fell in love with her. And then we became like friends through that. She's doing it not for any notoriety. Like, she's trying to save lives here. The amount of innocent people who are in prison it's staggering. It's like at least 30,000 people, and that's like a very conservative number. Earlier today, Maggie was on the phone with someone else that got out of prison. And on that phone call, she said, do you know anyone else who you were inside with who we need to get out? We need more people like Maggie just tirelessly and fiercely searching for the truth and telling everybody about it.
I think this medium of podcasting has started to create a lot of activists, a lot of people that care.
The thing about podcasting is that it's an incredibly intimate medium. When you're listening to Maggie tell it to you, you're not thinking about all the other listeners when you're listening to a podcast. You're thinking about, I'm being told this by someone I trust.
My podcast, Murder and Alliance, I did a 20-episode investigation about a man that myself and these two private investigators thought might be innocent. Around episode 18, we figured out he's actually not innocent. We think he did this, and we had spent almost 2 years on this case. I had the most visceral, emotional reaction to that, not only because I was upset that I had been duped and put so much time into a podcast that wasn't going to help somebody, which is what my goal was. And I cannot tell you how many people reached out and said, this is what I want to hear when I listen to journalism.
It was just all so much to take in going into this investigation, thinking one thing and having the information start to lay out something different.
I don't know. I feel really confused. I just think about Sue. I don't want to have to say to her, I can't do this. I don't want to say that to her. I'm just like, what if David did this?
It's really, really amazing the amount of people who reach out and say, how can I help? What can I do? I heard this story. And that is so inspiring. And that also keeps me going. Not only the haters, but the people who do care and say, keep doing this work because I hear it and I care. My mom always encouraged me to be me, be creative. My expression was in the way that I look. If I can put amazing credentials on my resume, it should not matter what I look like. Looking the way that I look is groundbreaking because I would bet there are no other Pulitzers with neck tattoos. And I've sat down with Hank Skinner. He's been in prison for over 30 years, and we had been corresponding for years. So when I finally met him in person and sat down, he said, man, if I knew this was you and what you looked like, I would have been way more open to talk to you sooner. And I think that's because I look like and act like a person that he can relate to. For women to get to where they want to be, we really have to believe in ourselves. I have so many young girls that come up to me and say, you inspired me to be me. I can look and dress the way I want, and that shouldn't matter. What should matter is my inside, my person, my brain. I can have a nose ring and have this job. Yeah, girl, you have that nose ring. Like, you have brains, you can have that job with your nose ring. The world is your oyster no matter what you look like. And that goes for skin color, everything, gender identity. Be you and you can be successful. Just be you and have that drive. I am honored to be a part of World Women Hour.